All right, we're live.
Hey, we did it.
Yes, we
I'm
did.
Ron Olson.
I'm Jody Cotton.
Okay, so you want to start, Jody? Go ahead.
Yeah, let me pull up my questions. So this is for the Amazing Grace video. What doctrine in Wilbur's heart drove him to advocate? Why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent? So let's do the first part. What doctrine in Wilbur's heart drove him to advocate? And I thought it was his faith in God. And I did a quote between him and his butler where he said, "You found God, sir?" And Wilbur replies, "I think he found me. Do you have any idea how inconvenient it is, how idiotic it will sound? I have a political career glittering ahead of me in my heart, and I want spider webs." And the other big thing in his heart I thought was equality for men. And Wilbur said in the movie, "Ladies and gentlemen, uh, this is a slave ship," and then he talks about at the very end, remember that God made men equal.
Okay, very good. I totally agree with you on that. I think he also felt um, service, that he needed to to do something to serve his fellow men. What could he do to help others? And then definitely that all men were created equal and that all men should have their freedom, that they should not be enslaved to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that question kind of threw me off because the second part of that says, why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart? And I don't feel like this movie showed much about the doctrine of family. I mean, as far as would he have that doctrine in his heart? So I'm glad that you came up with those other ideas as well, because I think that, for that portion that we'll talk about in a second, but I think more the doctrine of all men were created equal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Why is the doctrine of the family so important to have in your heart to be passionate and persistent? And I said, what you hold dear in your heart is what you advocate. It's like when you learn something new and have an aha moment and you want to share it with others. If you don't hold it dear in your heart, you won't share it.
Right, exactly. I'm going to write down that aha moment. That's good. That's very true. I think that and I think he did have that aha moment with, that quote that you read about him finding God. I think that was his aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I just put too that if you're not passionate about something, you're not going to be persistent, and you're not going to be driven to do anything with it. And it's the having it in your heart is the flame that keeps you moving forward, and that doesn't. So I think the doctrine in his heart about all men created equal is what made him keep going. What was it, 5 years or something like that before he got it passed?
Yeah.
About 5 years or something, and he had almost given up, and then decided he needed to keep going again. So I think if that's not in your heart, you're not going to do anything with it. It's just going to be a nice idea.
Yeah, you might voice it once or twice, but you aren't going to go on for 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah.
You aren't going to make it a lifetime.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
Nope.
Okay. So the second question is, how did Wilbur employ a theoretical Bronfenbrenner approach to become a more effective advocate? Identify at least one thing in each system and be specific. So this one, I don't know, this one was kind of hard for me because I wasn't really sure if we had to identify portions out of the movie, and so I kind of played around with it a little bit, but in the microsystem, which is the small immediate setting, the quote that I put was, which is why we're too young to realize that certain things are impossible. So We will do them anyway. I need an answer, Wilbur. Do you intend to use your beautiful voice to praise the Lord or change the world? And that was him talking to, Pitt, whatever his first name was. I can't remember, Will or
William, yep.
William Pitt or whatever. So I think to me that was kind of his microsystem then, was his friends. I mean, that I know of, he didn't have any family, and so his immediate people that he was close to was that, and then in their discussion when he asked him, what are you going to do? Are you going to just praise God, or are you going to change the world? And then, of course, he was his friends were his family, so I think any interaction that he had with his friends as they were trying to get him to advocate could probably work in this system. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with microsystem. I had put William Pitt and that moment where he said, that they were too young to know that it was impossible, because I think that's an important one. I put John Newton because he was the former priest.
Oh, yeah.
And when he kind of expresses his confusion over whether to join the church full time or to advocate, John Newton very much tells him that he should advocate for the slaves. And then Barbara Spooner, because she became his wife, and then was the one that kind of helped him continue to kind of get over that little hump to go back and advocate. And with her, I put the quote, because after night comes day, the people aren't so afraid now. The war with France is being won. When they stop being afraid, they'll rediscover their compassion. And then he replies back, so people have their compassion back, and she says, and you still have your passion. That matters more. And then that's when he kind of went back and started to advocate again.
Okay. Awesome. So then the mesosystems, and I had to just put what they were because I didn't remember. So these are the interrelationships between two or more microsystems. And I put, for this one, and I don't know where it really fits. It could maybe be better up in the microsystem, but I put his conversation with John Newton, where he told him, he said that you'll get filthy with it, you'll dream about it, you'll see it in broad daylight, but do it for God's sake.
Okay.
I think that was the same one you were talking about before.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure, if it was more, if he was more of a mesosystem or a microsystem, I think perhaps he could be both.
Yeah, I get confused too. I'm not clear on the boundaries between them.
Yeah. And then let's see, the other thing that I put, and I can't remember why I put this, but brought his family and friends together. So he was bringing different microsystems, during the meeting that he had with all of the other advocates. He brought them together. He was constantly doing things with his friends to bring, friends together.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that was one that was just kind of unclear for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely not sure if I totally grasp the systems very well. I put the Duke of Clarence when Wilbur refuses to play cards, when a person becomes part of the bet, and then I said when William Pitt brings his friends to lunch, and then I did the quote from Equiano, when Wilbur asks him, there's something you wish to discuss with me, and Equiano says, no, we don't want to talk because we hear that you're a man that doesn't believe what he hears until he sees with his own eyes. And then that's kind of when they go into the showing him things. I don't know, though.
Well, I think those fit. I think, to me, I kind of think those two the micro and the meso system, they kind of overlap each other, and really, to me anyway, they're not really totally separate. They're kind of meshed together.
I think so too.
So, and then the exosystem, that's the outside settings that don't actually participate but affect one of the microsystems. And I put John Newton's quote, but I don't think that fits there as much as it fits up in the mesosystem, so I'm going to take that one out. But where he took an active part in Parliament and he stood up for what he believed. So that was kind of a bigger, broader system. And then as they worked to change policy, I don't know. What did you get for exosystem?
I put John Newton and did a quote, and I don't know whether this doesn't fit or not because you just said that name. But I did the quote where he says, "You're the reason I came. You told me that you lived in the company of 20,000 ghosts, the ghosts of slaves." And then John Newton says, "I was explaining to a child why a grown man covers in a dark corner." And then I also put Sir William Dolben when he said, because he had no active part, Wilbur had no active part in this, he said, "I recently took passage from Sierra Leone aboard a slave ship. What I saw during those 15 days, but I believe there are plenty of others in the house who will share your feelings. They're just afraid to show it."
Okay, and that's a great one. Who was that one?
That was Sir William Dolben.
And it was where, give me a couple keywords so I can find that statement again in my...
I recently took passage from Sierra Leone aboard a slave ship. I can email you that quote really quick if you want.
I've got I have a script here someplace. I'm not sure what I did.
There you go. I just emailed it to you. I did the I watched the video and then I went through the transcript because it was so much easier to get the quotes out that way.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I think that's a great one. I think those two are really good there. So then in the macro system, I put he worked to give freedom to all. He fought for equal rights. I didn't necessarily get a. Did you get a quote from the movie to fit in macro system?
I did, but I don't know whether I was doing it right. So I did a quote of the macro system impacting him from Tarleton, and it says, "It seems my young friend opposite has a long-term strategy to destroy the very nation that spawned him. While I was in Virginia losing my fingers in battle with the Americans, he was busy appeasing them." And so it's kind of a quote against him because it was from the House of Commons. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm very unsure on the systems.
Yeah,
I don't know if that fits or not, but I think the macro system for him was the House of Commons, but he was having to defend against constant attacks.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, I think here again, it's hard to see exactly. I wish she would have, or that she would give us kind of teachers' answers to these questions. Maybe I will suggest that to her after it's all said and done. Will you email us your answers to these questions?
Well, it was especially hard when I first watched it, I couldn't get our book to open that had the systems in it, so then I had to go to Wikipedia. Mm-hmm. But last night it opened again.
Mm-hmm.
so I was able to go back, but it's just so geared towards a child, not
Exactly. It
towards
really, yeah, it
advocating something.
made my brain think. So then I put in too the Chrono system because it was in the book, and it talks about it being changes in systems over time. And the one that I put in was the very last statement where they're telling the results to the vote, and that the last statement was, "I declare the Bill of Abolition of the slave trade to be passed." That seemed to fit as far as it being the change over time to the system and the way things were done.
Yeah. Okay.
Was I thinking clearly on that one, do you think?
I think you were. I put the Duke of Clarence, that quote where he says, "It means my nobility obliges me to recognize the virtue of an exceptional commoner," because that was over time his change in attitude towards Wilbur. And then Charles Fox right after that said, "When people speak of great men, they think of men like Napoleon, men of violence. Rarely do they think of peaceful men." But then William Wilberforce, however, will return to his family, lay his head on his pillow, and remember the slave trade is no more. So I put that just because, but I think we kind of both hit the same thing. I just did quotes from people.
Right.
Because their attitudes had changed so dramatically.
Cool.
I also put a quote from William where James Stephen had come back from the Indies and brought back accounts of the slaves being burned alive, and pages of first-hand accounts and figures and statistics, because I thought that also kind of applied with temporal change. So for a time, I don't know. I was confused.
Yeah. Well, I think we got it covered. I mean, I think we basically understand what it's all about, sort of. Let's hope she's not listening to this podcast. Oh, dear. Anyway, I think we got that. Do you have anything else to add to that part?
That's all I had written down. But.
Perfect. All right, so you want to go with the next question then?
Yep. How did Wilbur and his fellow advocates do and share their research? What evidence did they provide to persuade those opposing or on the fence? So I said they built a box, the dimensions of a slave birth, wrote a book about time and slavery, that was Equiano. They did badges, petitions, and speeches. He took people aboard the Madagascar, the slave ship. He spoke with those that worked on slave ships, doctors that treated patients on slave ships, and slaves who had been whipped and branded, and they also did a petition.
Okay. I think I got exactly those same things. I don't think I necessarily had any more. I think one of the best things he did, and I think this might be down in one of the other questions, but when he actually showed the people on the boat the slave ship, and they smelt it, I mean, they could smell it, and that to me would be would persuade me.
Yeah.
Maybe think twice about it if I, and I don't know how long that ship had been sitting there. I don't know whether it just had barely gotten back or if it had been there for a while. But the stench would have been unbelievable, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, I think the only other thing that I got there was that they researched for the better part of the year before presenting their findings. So it wasn't just a quick here you go, here's some findings. They spent a long time with their research before they, you know, or maybe they were presenting it as they went along, but I think it was the better part of the year before they presented it in the House of Commons.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And then they continued to build their research. They didn't stop, you know.
Right, right. Okay. I also put down there too, and you may have gotten this one about the supporters. Our supporters began to only buy sugar produced without slaves in India, or they stopped using sugar altogether. It seemed our message was everywhere. At least now there was hope, real hope. We had a year to collect enough evidence to convince Parliament of our case. So.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have anything else to go there?
Nope.
Okay, so the next question, how does the film portray the importance of working together as a group? And the second part of that is, what has family advocacy group work taught you? So the first question, how does the film portray the importance of working together as a group? I think to me, it showed that there was strength in numbers, and that the more you had on your side, the easier it was to, you know, gain support, and that it was easier when you had a group. You could divide and conquer. So each of them would kind of have their own little piece of research that they went after to find. Let's see. Oh, and then I put that quote that I just told you in the last question. I put it down here into this one too. That that, you know, they had a year and they were going throughout, and then the quote that says, "All that winter we spread out across the country gathering evidence for Parliament. Thomas rode to Bristol, Liverpool, Plymouth, talking to men who worked the slave ships, ship's doctors who treated them, slaves themselves who had been whipped and branded." So, and you used that one back up in another question too, I think. So, anyway, those, I think my main thought was just that there's strength in numbers within a group.
Yeah, I agree. I put time, because when you're with a group, then there's many people working together, so you're able to accomplish more in the time that you have. Microsystems, there's more microsystems because each group member has their own microsystems.
Oh, that's a good thought.
Influence, which just kind of goes with microsystem, because you have different organizations that you have influence with. As a group, then you can motivate each other and not give up as easily. And the last one I put was think different, because in the end it was thinking different that helped them to win it.
That's true, where they changed their whole thing to the flag, rather than, yeah, that's totally good. I'll have to find that quote. Okay, and then what has family advocacy group work taught you? And I think a lot of those things that we've already talked about, you know, their strength in numbers, that more heads are better than one. One voice can make a difference, but working as a group can have a greater impact. So, you know, Sister Meeker always told us that you know, your voice can make a difference, but then in one of the readings or something where it said that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but we can find groups that are already formed to join with. So we don't have to be the sole person that saves the world. We can, you know, join with a group. So those were my couple of thoughts for that.
Yeah, I agree. I put that you need to work with others if you want to progress your movement. I think one voice can make a difference, but if you have a bunch of different voices all saying the same thing but not working together, it doesn't really progress things the same. And working with others helps you sometimes see things differently and come up with different approaches. Because I was thinking of the movie, um, if that one lawyer hadn't come up with that different approach, who knows how much longer it would have taken them to abolish the slave trade.
That's very good. Um, Perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I guess I'm the next one. What parallels do you see between Wilbur and Captain Moroni in Alma 46? What is a Christian and professional family advocate, and how did Wilbur exemplify that? How can you be effective and Christ-like against such loud and often degrading voices? So with the comparison between Wilbur and Captain Moroni, I said they both served their God. They both served God. They took a stand, and they invited others to join them in that stand. So with both of them, they didn't just have something that was important. They became an advocate in that issue.
Okay. I had all those same thoughts. Let's see. I just quoted in here verse 16 where Moroni prayed that the cause of the Christians and the freedom of the land might be favored, and Wilbur sought for the same thing. And then neither one would forsake God or their cause. I think you mentioned that too. So they both tried to persuade those who believed to come forth and join the fight. So yeah, I appreciated studying that Alma 46 again, and just, relating it to, more modern life, and how, how that can be done in a different setting.
For the second part of that, I put, I've realized the louder the voices, the more often it is the minority trying to convince everyone it is the majority. Wilbur put God first and tried to do His will. I can be effective by remembering my Savior and putting Him first and not giving up.
I think so. You did those next two questions there together.
Kind of, because I kind of thought they kind of went together.
Yeah, they totally do. Yeah, I think he totally exemplified that. And I put more quotes from Elder Oaks in his, out of his talk, that I feel like Wilbur exemplified those. The first one I put was, no person with values based on religious belief should apologize for taking those values into the public square. Religious persons need to be skillful in how they do so, but they need not yield to an adversary's assumption that the whole effort is illegitimate. And I feel like, he because of his belief in God and his belief that God had called him to this calling, he was not, he didn't apologize for taking this into the public square, so to speak. And then the other one, the slavery controversy, was seen as a great moral issue and became the major political issue of the 19th century because of the preaching of clergy and the political action of churches. I don't think he was talking about this particular slavery issue, but I think that it did become a moral issue for Wilbur. I think he totally went after it because it was a moral issue, and to him it was morally wrong to do that. So those were the couple of quotes from Elder Oaks that I put in that one. And then I used a couple where he talked about his 5 things that he told us we should do to be effective advocates. And the first was we must speak with love, always showing patience, understanding, and compassion toward our adversaries. And I think Wilbur exemplified that because he was not confrontational. He showed patience and understanding and tried to work with the feelings of everybody. And then the other one, Elder Oaks said, was religious persons will often be most persuasive in political discourse by framing arguments and positions in ways that are respectful of those who do not share their religious beliefs and that contribute to the reason, discussion, and compromise that is essential in a pluralistic society. So those two kind of go together, but I think he was, respectful and just, fought for it with respect and love and patience and understanding. So those were my thoughts that I pulled in from Elder Oaks about those 2 questions.
No, that was great. I didn't pull in that stuff from Elder Oaks, but I can see how much it applies. So
yeah,
that was really good.
Okay. Do you have any other thoughts on those?
Nope.
Okay. So the next question was, Marcia Barlow spoke on persuasive speaking and writing. Did Wilbur and others exemplify any of Marcia's ideas? And I think definitely he did. And so I just kind of wrote down what her guidelines were, and that the way you win is to weave everything you say around a narrative and a story. And so the story, when he was at the slave ship, the Madagascar, I mean, that was definitely a story he was telling.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aquilano also told his story in his book, and as he showed Wilbur the ship, that was kind of the story that they used in the whole fight. And then the story of his friend is as John, whatever his name was, the captain of the slave ship, and then as he sang Amazing Grace. And then the story of self, story of us, and story of now that she did. I think Equiano's book was the story of self. The slave ship could work for the story of us. And then the story of now is we've got to do something. So he had a call to action. And then another one of her points was an engaging opening is everything. And his opening was when he said, it's with a heavy heart that I bring to the attention of this house a trade which degrades men to the level of brutes and insults the highest qualities of our common nature. I'm speaking of the slave trade. I know that many of my honorable friends in this house have interests in Indies. Others have investments in plantations. Others are ship owners. And I believe them to be men of humanity. I believe you all to be men of humanity. If the wretchedness of any one of the many hundreds of slaves stowed in their ships could be brought to view, anyway, that quote, I think, was his engaging opening.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the points in her ideas on persuasive speaking that I pulled out.
Yeah, I put her quote on, research has found the more the listeners understood a story, the more their brain activity dovetails with the speaker. When you listen to stories to understand them, you experience the exact same brain pattern as the person who's telling the story. So if you want to communicate with people, narrative storytelling is your key. So that was my quote from her. Mm-hmm. And I also did the, when he first brought up the abolition of slavery, it's with a heavy heart. That one's in there. And then when, I think we have the same quotes on this one, but they're the ones that kind of follow with what she said. When Equiano and Thomas Clarkston convinced Wilbur to fight for the abolishment, and they show him the shackles. These are for the legs, these are for the arms, this is for the neck. Works like so. When the slaves leave the port in Africa, they're locked into a space of 4 foot by 18 inches. They have no sanitation. So they kind of tell the story there. And I could go, I did, it's a little bit longer, but. And then when the women and men were aboard the slave ship Madagascar. And then I did the quote from William, ladies and gentlemen, this is the slave ship, the Madagascar. Because he's telling the story of the slaves that lived on there. Yep, those are the only 3 I have that I made a put.
Okay, so you're on next.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, Okay, what role did the government policy and religious freedom play in the fight of this slave trade? Did you see the political system being pro-family? Why or why not? Answer all questions. So, for the first part, I did the quote from William Dolben, no shame, no shame. Were I the representative of a port city, how could I tell those whom I represent that I'm voting to end their livelihood? So I put port city representatives were trying to protect their position with the voters. There was worry over the French progressing if they pulled out of the slave trade, and rumors started to paint a poor character of those trying to abolish slavery.
Okay. So I think you covered it there. I don't think I put anything other than a lot of the government officials had slaves and they didn't want to, I don't think they wanted to give up their slaves. They would have to do that if it was abolished.
Well, what's interesting actually with that is it was just the trade itself. So they didn't end slavery. It was just this abolishment of slave trade on the ships.
True.
So they wouldn't have actually had to give up their slaves. They just wouldn't have been able to the slave.
Yeah. Get any more. Yeah. Let's see what else. I put something here by Elder Oaks. I believe that questions of right and wrong, whether based on religious principles or any other source of values, are legitimate in any debate over laws or public policy. So that would fit, I think, with religious freedom. The religious freedom play into the fight. That it was a moral question of being right or wrong. Let's see, and then I put, we must not be deterred or coerced into silence by any kind of intimidation. Insist on our constitutional right and duty to exercise our religion, to vote our conscience on public issues, and to participate in elections and debates in the public square and the halls of justice. So, I guess I use that as religious freedom as well, or just freedom.
And for the second part, I said that it was not pro-family. There was no protection for the families on the ship. Families were separated in slavery. Women were raped.
I agree with you there.
Were you surprised during conference how, sorry, I know this is a little bit off topic, but how many family advocacy things I felt like were standing out.
Yeah, I know. You pick them out, don't you? It's like, oh, there's another one. Oh.
Exactly. I'm like, oh, they're doing a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of what we talked about in class on their talks. But.
Yeah. I totally agree. So then, did we answer the why or why not question too, I think?
I think we did. That was our second part. It wasn't pro-family and the slavery practice itself with women being raped and.
Okay. So then the next question is, why do you feel that Wilbur used his time on, or do you feel that he used his time on Earth well? And I said definitely yes. That and a couple of the things that I quoted is that he decided to reward various volunteers who worked for some quite precariously financed charities. That was when he had all of the homeless people come to his house for meals. When, let's see, when Thomas Clarkson was talking, Mr. Wilberforce, we understand you're having problems choosing whether to do the work of God or the work of a political activist. So he was, you know, he was trying to do both. He was advocating for both, I believe. And then Hannah More said, we humbly suggest that you can do both. One quote towards the end of the movie that Wilbur said was, I never changed, I don't change. So I think he was, you know, he was the same throughout his entire life. His integrity was intact. And then that quote that you used earlier, Wilberforce, however, will return to his family, lay his head on his pillow, and remember the slave trade is no more. So I think that that was a confirmation that his, you know, he'd been using his time wisely. He fought for those who could not fight for themselves, and his life was totally devoted to others and to God.
On this one, I did a quote from Elder Christofferson. Zion is Zion because of the characters, attributes, and faithfulness of her citizens. Remember, the Lord called his people Zion because they were of one heart and one mind and dwelt in righteousness, and there was no poor among them. If we would establish Zion in our homes, branches, wards, stakes, we must rise to this standard. It will be necessary, number one, to become unified in one heart and mind, number two, to become individually and collectively a holy people, and number three, to care for the poor and needy with such effectiveness that we eliminate poverty among us. We cannot wait until Zion comes to these things to happen. Zion will only come as they happen.
That works great there.
Yeah, and so then I said he used his time very well. He tried to unify thoughts of equality. He worked on his relationship with God. So I took the three parts in there and kind of related it to him. And then he tried to advocate for the slaves that needed help. So he did the work of the Lord, he advocated, and he tried to protect all of God's people.
Perfect. That's awesome. Yeah. Then how did you see him showing the elements of consecration? And I think you probably answered that.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. No, I
put it all together.
Yeah, I think that you did great with that. And I broke up his consecrated life as a life of labor, a life of service, a life of integrity. And so I just went through and pulled out, you know, different parts of the movie that exemplified those things, like a life of service, where he said, how can we live in houses like this when others are living in boxes? So he worked tirelessly for the slaves being treated poorly. Consecrated life is a life of integrity. When William Pitt told him that he was born for this and that he found God, he thinks, you know, God found him. Your conscience is indeed precious, so the quote about that. So I think he really exemplified, you know, a life of integrity, because he was, anyway, so those were my thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I think you did too. Any other profound thoughts or personal insights from the movie that are related to child and family advocacy? I said not to give up, because as we saw in the movie, that it didn't happen when they thought. If they had given up, kind of, I feel like many times in our lives the great things don't happen until you feel like you've kind of hit the rock bottom. Mm-hmm. And that's when the adversary expects you to give up, and many people do. And if that's where they gave up, it wouldn't have happened. So it was persevering past that point. Don't prejudge who might join, because they were clearly shocked. I think, wasn't it? Sorry, I didn't write the name here, but I think that was when Charles Fox came in and joined.
Parliament person.
Yeah, joined
Yeah.
their group. That was not someone they expected to come in. Work together. If they hadn't worked together as a group, then they wouldn't have made nearly the headway they did, and you need to be prepared. So
I just put when Wilbur and Thomas Clarkson are talking about the French Revolution, Wilbur says every day we change things by degrees, and I think that that's the way it is with advocacy, is that every day by degrees we can change things for the better. That it, just and then during the meeting with the people about the slavery issue, one of the men said to Wilbur, if you make the world better in one way, it becomes better in every way. And so I think that can apply to advocacy, because if we, if we make the world better in one way for one person, then that one person goes out and makes it better for another person, and pretty soon it's a snowball effect. So we can't ever say, well, I just did one little thing. Well, that one little thing could be, you never know generations down the road what that one little thing did for those generations of people.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the other thoughts that I had on that one.
Very good.
Then the other two questions were just kind of personal, as far as I don't think they had anything to do with the movie per se. I mean, we can talk about them if you want to, but we're on, it looks like about 55 minutes right now, maybe a little less than that.
Sorry, I have my timer going. Oh, I have 46, but we're good
46.
Either way.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I don't...
When we went live. 46 from when we went live.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I guess we can talk about the other two. Was it your turn or my turn?
It doesn't matter. I can go next if you want. Number 10. What was your understanding of the doctrine of the family at the beginning of the semester, and how has it changed? I said my understanding of the doctrine was what I remembered from years ago when I first heard the proclamation of the family. I didn't remember many parts. The rest of my understanding was from the example in my home, but I grew up in an inactive family. And how has it changed? I put bullet points. Know the proclamation to the family. I put the song, that they've changed it, teach me all that I can do, instead of be. Families are the plan of happiness. I really didn't know that. So
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And advocate, don't be silent, share.
Awesome. I put a lot of those same things. I think that it was, actually it wasn't this semester, but I think it might have been last semester when I had my class on the proclamation. I don't know if you've taken that one yet. It was one of the Religion 200 or something. But it was then that I realized, through Sister Beck's talk about the doctrine of the family, that I realized that the family was the reason. Do you remember that talk where she said it's the fall, the creation, the fall, and the atonement are all about family?
Mm-hmm. The theology, yeah.
Yeah, the theology of the family. And so I think that, my understanding of that has been deepened. So my doctrine of the family, I think, was pretty solid at the beginning, but the thing that changed for me was how vital and important it is to be a defender and an advocate for and of the family, no matter what. I mean, that's our responsibility. That's what eternity is all about. And if we don't advocate for that, then,
Mm-hmm.
He's not nearly as pleasant, So, and then question 11, picture your spouse and children, current or future, and write down some thoughts about how they will benefit from you taking this class. And just a couple thoughts I had, that I think the biggest way my posterity is going to benefit from me taking this class is that I'll never stop advocating for them or for the family unit. And that I've been given some valuable tools to use to be an effective family advocate. Before this class, I had no idea how to go about doing that. I just felt like believing in it was enough. But now that I understand that that's not, and what I can do moving forward to, you know, make it a better world for my children and my grandchildren, has been of great benefit to me.
I put that I better understand the doctrine of the family now, and because I understand it better, that I understand the need to teach it to my family better, and I also need to teach that we cannot be silent, we need to be advocates, and that we need to do, not just believe. So
perfect.
That's it.
You have it. Okay, I'm going to stop the broadcast.
Yay!
Okay, so we didn't have to summarize or anything, I hope, at the very end.
I don't think so. I reread her instructions, and it did not look like we had to.
All right, I'm stopping the broadcast.